जी बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। तो चैप्टर 2 है जी हमारा ऑफ विटनेसेस पे, इसको हम स्टार्ट करते हैं। आर्टिकल 3 है हु मे टेस्टिफाई। इस आर्टिकल में बेसिकली हम देखेंगे कि हु कैन बी ए विटनेस इन ए कोर्ट टू गिव ओरल एविडेंस इन कोर्ट, तो एंड हु कैन नॉट बी। तो इसमें इसको देखते हैं। ऑल पर्सन्स शैल बी कम्पिटेंट टू टेस्टिफाई unless the court considers that they are prevented from understanding the questions put to them or from giving rational answers to those questions by tender years, extreme old age, disease, whether of body or mind or any other cause of the same kind. So the number one thing which has been established under this article is that all persons are competent to testify. But then the exceptions starts. So very first exception to this general rule that all persons are competent to testify is that if the court thinks that, so the discretion and the decision of the court shall apply in this regard. So there is no black and white in this regard. Instead, the court's discretion in this regard shall apply if the court thinks that a particular person, due to the extreme old age or due to the tender age or due to any disease of body or due to any disease of mind or due to any other reason, so this is open ended, that person cannot understand the questions which would be asked to him or her, or that person cannot give the rational answers to those questions. So such person who could not understand the questions or their answers due to these reasons, extreme old age, tender age, disease of body, disease of mind, or any other cause of the same kind, that person shall not be a competent witness in the court of law. Apart from them, all those persons who have got the age of majority, who could understand the questions and can give the rational answers to those questions, those persons are competent witnesses in a court of law. Then comes the provision provided that a person shall not be competent to testify if he has been convicted by a court for perjury or giving false evidence. So if any person is fulfilling the above mentioned eligibility criteria to be a witness, for example, he is a person of sound mind, he is a mature and major person, he can answer the questions logically. So up to the above mentioned paragraph, he is fulfilling the criteria. But if he has been convicted for the offense of perjury or giving false evidence in a court of law, then regardless of the fact that the above mentioned criteria is fulfilled, then that person shall be considered as an incompetent witness to be in court. Then comes the provision of provision, which is provided further that the provisions of first proviso shall not apply to a person about whom the court is satisfied that he has repented thereafter and mended his ways. So it is talking about the above mentioned provision which was related to perjury. So if the court thinks that although this person has committed perjury like 5 years ago, 10 years ago or 2 years ago, but afterwards he has repented and he has mended his ways, then the court can allow him to be a witness in any case and the court can rely on his or her evidence. Another provision that the court shall determine the competence of a witness in accordance with the qualifications prescribed by the injunctions of Islam as laid down in the Holy Quran and Sunnah for a witness, and where such witness is not forthcoming, the court may take the evidence of a witness who may be available. So, basically another threshold which would be applied in this regard, in addition to the above mentioned criteria, this shall also be observed that the eligibility shall be determined in accordance with the injunctions of Islam as enumerated in the Holy Quran and Sunnah. But this has not been specifically prescribed that what are those qualifications which are provided by Holy Quran and Sunnah. Instead, it has been left open-ended, and this is, I would say, this is a very general statement. So, if there was a need, they should bring up the real criteria which has been provided in the Holy Quran and Sunnah, that should be extracted from there and it should be reproduced here, but it's not present here. Instead, a general statement has been provided that the injunctions of Holy Quran and Sunnah would be observed, and if that criteria is not being fulfilled as prescribed in the Holy Quran and Sunnah, and no witness is available who could comply with those terms and conditions, then any witness who is available and fulfilling the above mentioned criteria, then his or her evidence shall be taken and that would be admissible. So, the priority shall be given, but if it is not possible, then a way forward has been provided, an exit has been provided to take the evidence of the witness who is present. Then comes the explanation: a lunatic is not incompetent to testify unless he is prevented by his lunacy from understanding the questions put to him and giving rational answers to them. A lunatic person is not an incompetent person necessarily. Instead, it would depend upon the type and nature of his lunacy. Some type of lunacies, they comes in intervals, they come and go. Sometimes that person is all right, he is okay, and sometimes he is not. So, in the period when that person is all right, okay, mentally sound, he can understand the questions and can give rational answers to them, then that person is a competent witness. But in those phases where he is falling in the interval of lunacy, then he would be considered as a lunatic person. So, these were the exceptions of that general statement which we discussed before, that all persons shall be competent to testify. Then we started unless, then provided, and if we talk about article number 4, this is also an exception to this general rule. Even article 5, 6, 7, 8, these are all exceptions to this general rule that all persons are competent. So, judges and magistrates, they are also incompetent witness, they are not a competent witness in certain areas, in certain matters. For example, no judge or magistrate shall, except upon the special order of some order to which he is subordinate, be compelled to answer any question as to his own conduct in court as such judge or magistrate, or as to anything which came to his knowledge in court as such judge or magistrate, but he may be examined as to other matters which occurred in his presence while he was so acting. A judge or magistrate cannot be compelled to answer any question which is related to his conduct as such judge or magistrate, that how he entertained the evidence, was it admissible or not, how he recorded the evidence. So, he cannot be questioned about his conduct. Similarly, he or she cannot be questioned about anything which came to his knowledge, being such judge or magistrate. But yes, he can be questioned on these both things with the prior approval of the superior judiciary to which he or she is subordinate. So, these are the two exceptions to that general rule that all persons are competent. But in a third circumstance, a judge or magistrate can be questioned. He can be questioned about anything which came to his knowledge as an ordinary person, not being a judge. So, he cannot be questioned about anything which came to his knowledge as a judge, but he can be questioned about anything which came to his knowledge as an ordinary person. So, if any murder or hurt is committed in a court of law in front of the judge, then he or she can be a witness about that incident. But he cannot be questioned about his handling of evidence, his recording of evidence. He cannot be questioned about anything which came to his knowledge, being such judge, any document, any other fact. After that comes Article 5, communication during marriage. This is also an exception to that general rule that all persons are competent. No person who is or has been married shall be compelled to disclose any communication made to him during marriage by any person to whom he is or has been married, nor shall he be permitted to disclose any such communication unless the person who made it, his representative in interest, consents, except in suits between married persons or proceedings in which one married person is prosecuted. So, any married person who is or has been. So, it is not necessary that that relationship is in continuance. It may have been abrogated as well. In both cases, whether it is in continuance or it has been abrogated, in both cases a protection has been granted to the mutual communication of husband and wife, that whatever they have said to each other during the continuance of that valid marriage, that is a confidential thing, and no question can be asked about that in a court of law. Yes, if the person whose statement is intended to be quoted or used in a court of law by the husband, if he wants to use the statement of wife, or in other way around, in both cases, if that person whose statement is being used, if he or she consents in that regard, then that can be used. Similarly, if the case is in between those husband and wife, one is prosecuting the other, or if it is related to a civil matter, then this protection shall not apply. Then they can quote their statements which they have said to each other during the continuance of that marriage. So, this extra protection actually has been granted to safeguard the institution of wedlock in order to protect the confidentiality of the things, so that the talk of homes that shouldn't come to the court in very preliminary or without any necessity, in very preliminary stages. तो इसके लिए इसको जो है एक प्रोटेक्शन दी गई है, और इसलिए भी कभी अगर इस तरह की बातें कोर्ट में आएंगी और अगर वो मैरिज कंटिन्यू कर रही है तो हो सकता है इट में कॉस्ट ए स्टेन ऑन दैट मैरिज, और उसके चलने की जो है चांसेस कम हो सकते हैं. तो ये भी एक एक्सेप्शन है जी. इसके बाद है एविडेंस एज टू अफेयर्स ऑफ स्टेट. No one shall be permitted to give any evidence derived from unpublished official records relating to any affairs of state, except with the permission of the officer at the head of the department concerned, who shall give or withhold such permission as he thinks fit. किसी भी पब्लिक ऑफिस, किसी भी गवर्नमेंट ऑफिस का जो अनपब्लिश्ड रिकॉर्ड है, जिसको कि उन्होंने पब्लिक के लिए पब्लिश नहीं किया, जिसको कि उन्होंने पब्लिक डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं है, वो एक प्राइवेट ऑफिशियल कॉन्फिडेंशियल डॉक्यूमेंट है, उसको भी एविडेंस के तौर पर इस्तेमाल नहीं किया जा सकता किसी भी कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ में. ये भी ज़रूरी था उन डॉक्यूमेंट्स की कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी को मेंटेन करने के लिए. हाँ, अगर उस डिपार्टमेंट का, उस ऑफिस का हेड परमिट करता है कि येस यू कैन यूज़ दिस डॉक्यूमेंट एज एविडेंस इन कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ, देन दैट कैन बी यूज्ड. In this article, official records relating to the affairs of state, including documents concerning industrial or commercial activities carried on directly or indirectly by the federal government or a provincial government or any statutory body or corporation or company set up or controlled by such government. इसमें जो है ये प्रोटेक्शन जो है दिस इज़ बीइंग एक्सटेंडेड टू नॉट ओनली दी प्रॉपर गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसेज, डिपार्टमेंट्स, मिनिस्ट्रीज, but it is also extending to all the corporations, companies, entities, semi-government institutions or industrial or commercial activities which are being carried out by the state principally or majorly. So if any company, for example, what would I say, the Sui Gas, WAPDA or any university or any other company which is being owned by the state, this protection is extending to their documents as well. Similarly, official communication, no public officer shall be compelled to disclose communication made to him in official confidence when he considers that the public interest would suffer by the disclosure. So this is also an exception to that general rule that all persons are competent to testify. So this article is saying that no, a public officer is not competent to testify about any public dealings, public matters, public affairs which are of a confidential nature. He cannot be asked in a court of law to talk about the confidential things discussed in his office during a meeting. They are given protection, due protection, and I think that this was needed as well. So explanation in this article, communication includes communications concerning industrial or commercial. In the same way, this protection is also extending to the commercial and industrial activities. So any officer of a company which is mainly owned by the state, by the government of Pakistan or by a provincial government, this protection is extending to them as well. So that's it for today. Thank you very much.